Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Lara and today I'm going to be doing two very quick Speedy book reviews. The first book that I'm going to be reviewing is The Adventures of Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain. I read this book when I was very young and I literally remembered nothing about it. I just knew that there were kind of themes around race, themes around what it's like to be a child in a kind of poor environment. Like I vaguely remembered those things, but I really did not remember much about it. I wanted to read it because it is my brother's favorite book. He raves about it. He loves the book and the kind of feeling of like nostalgia when he reads this book. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to pick it up. I ended up picking up the audiobook, which is narrated by Nick Offerman. And I literally couldn't have made a better decision because I love Nick Offerman. I think he's fantastic. If you've ever watched Parks and Rec, he is the perfect character. And honestly, he reminds me of myself a little bit. I feel like we all have a bit of Ron Swanson in us, to be honest. Some are more just willing to accept it than others. So I listened to it and it was just a wonderful experience. I love this book because it's a very multi-layered book. It's a book about friendship. It's a book about, what it's like to be a child. It's a book about class and of being in an environment that is of a low socioeconomic status. It is also about race. And I just think Mark Twain does a really wonderful job of capturing what it is like to be a child. And my brother in particular, he talks about what it's like to be a young boy, when you're out with your friends and you're being mischievous and you're getting in trouble and you're doing dumb things. Like he said to me, he captures it perfectly. Now, I wasn't really like that when I was a kid. I was basically either just reading books, playing video games, or like outside playing sports. I wasn't like the naughty kid at all. And neither was my brother, to be fair. But I think what he captures is that like nostalgia of like what it was like when you were with your friends and you were messing around and you were doing dumb things. I think we've all done that a little bit. I like I said, I wasn't really like that, but I had my, very rare moments where we'd maybe run to the park and stay out a little bit longer than maybe we should have. It kind of made me think of my childhood. And I think that was really lovely and very unexpected. Like I didn't expect to be transported back to what it was like for me when I was a child and when I was with my brothers and my friends. And I think that's really magical. I think Mark Twain has a wonderful ability to create a very vivid environment. I think he did this with one of his other books that I've talked about on my channel before called The Innocents Abroad. And he has this very unique ability to capture the essence of whatever he's talking about, whether it's about childhood or whether it's about traveling and different cultures like he does in The Innocents Abroad. I remember when I finished it, I just felt kind of happy because it just reminded me of the good times. But then there are some heavy themes in this book as well. Like I think there's this undercurrent of Tom and his family environment isn't very nice. It's almost it's quite a toxic environment. Like he doesn't feel very loved as a child and that leads him to do the things that he does in the book. There's also this undercurrent of racism. We get the introduction of a few Black characters and we see the way that they're treated and the way that they are talked about in the society. And so we see that undercurrent as well. So there are some heavier themes that kind of are laid underneath this kind of very nostalgic read. And I really enjoyed it. I feel like this book gets a lot of hate. I think a lot of people say that you shouldn't read it because of the way that Mark Twain talks about race. And I just think that's really ignorant, to be completely honest. I've talked about this before on my channel. Like I'm happy to read books by authors who write about things that wouldn't be permissible today because it's just, a lot of it is factually very incorrect, but it's also perpetuating stereotypes that should no longer exist and really have no basis for existing. I think Mark Twain, he's a product of his environment. He's a product of the time. And we have to be very aware of that. So, don't hate on people who read it and enjoy it. I enjoyed it for the fact that it gave me insight to a time that I wasn't in, I wasn't alive in, and that I've had no experience of. I'm very lucky that I generally grew up in a place where multiculturalism exists and where, there were still issues, don't get me wrong, but generally it was nowhere near as bad as when this book was written, right? And so my experience of that environment is very limited. So see it in this book, written in the way that it was written, I really appreciated it for that. So I don't get the hate. I really don't understand it. We have to remember the time that it was written in. I gave this book 5 stars because I like I said, I think it gave me this sense of, you know, what it was like to be a child again. And I think we all forget that. And I think it's good to tap into our inner child now and then. And if we can, have it up all the time. But unfortunately, society doesn't really allow us to. It was a really wonderful whirlwind of an adventure. I felt like I went on an adventure with Tom and his mates. And I loved it. I really enjoyed it. The next book I'm going to review is Hard to Be a God by Arkady and Boris Strugatsky. I had no idea what to expect when I read this book. Never heard of it. I bought it secondhand. I saw it in the bookstore for like £2 and I was like, okay, let's give it a go. And I picked it up because it's like less than 200 pages long and it's the weirdest book I've read in a while. So this book is about a man who is from a future version of Earth and he goes to the society that is still stuck in the Middle Ages. Now, the premise is fascinating. I just don't think the authors did a very good job of executing on the premise, in my opinion. It's very weird. Like, it takes a lot of twists and turns that didn't really make sense to me. It's possible that I wasn't in the right mood for this story, but I was really hoping to see a lot of kind of commentary on what it was like to be in an environment where, you know, religion was at the forefront of society. You know, the Middle Ages was a really dark period for a lot of people because of the oppression, because of the active work that was done by religious groups to marginalize people of science and people who were pursuing that path of intellectual enlightenment. And so it's a really dark period. And yeah, I don't ever really felt like we got that sense of oppression in the book. I feel like there was a really big missed opportunity to really provide a fascinating commentary on what it was like to be a person in that time. I just don't feel like I feel like the goal that was set out wasn't achieved. And so it was very disappointing, to be honest. I was really expecting it to be a thought-provoking read and it just wasn't. It's one of those stories that I think just kind of meandered quite a lot and it kind of lost its original intention. I think the book had a lot of promise, especially when you think about that premise. The premise is fascinating, but it just didn't really deliver on it. I didn't really like the writing. I don't know whether it was a translation. I'm assuming it was, and maybe the translation didn't do justice to the writing, but I didn't really like the way that it was written. I didn't really connect with any of the characters, and I most certainly did not enjoy the way that that society was represented. I just don't think it captured the horrificness of, you know, being a person of science and being a person of maybe a different religion. So I was disappointed. I gave it a 3 stars. Somebody should write a book about that exact topic and just do a better job of it. So if anybody knows of any books that are like about a person who's from the future going back in time, we kind of get this commentary of what it's like to be in that time, please tell me, because I love the premise. And now I'm kind of itching for a book about that exact premise. But this one, unfortunately, just didn't really do it for me. If anybody's read this book, let me know, because I know nobody who's read this book. It seems to be quite a undercover, hidden secret of a sci-fi book. And maybe there's a reason why, because I personally don't think it was that great. I would love to hear somebody else's thoughts on it, because it just kind of, like I said, it felt like a missed opportunity. So there we have it. Those are 2 very speedy book reviews. Let me know your thoughts on either one. If you have any questions, as always, comment down below and I will see you there. Stay safe, everybody. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.